Welcome you, Hogetsu Laurie Belzer. Welcome back. Laurie is a good friend to the Sangha, and we're very fortunate in this age of Zoom that she could Zoom in from Chicago to be with us this morning. So thank you so much, Laurie. It's beautiful to see your face here. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to see everyone. I don't know if I've met everyone, but I remember John and Kate and G. Khan and Wendy. I think I might have met you during a sewing retreat. Yes. And Emily, somehow I feel I know you, although I'm not sure if I actually met you. So that might be Ryan and David. So greetings, Bodhisattvas, one and all. So it was, I had a feeling sitting this morning, I don't know if this ever happens to you, of kind of a vastness, where this kind of boundary of my body here in Chicago and your body's there, wherever you are, feels permeable, sometimes feels like it doesn't exist, and then something else happens and I forget that. So, but there's something about our practice that has a movement towards a radical inclusivity, a boundlessness. And so in the spirit of that, I'd like to share a little story. And I believe some of you are familiar with the hidden lamp, which are stories of Buddhist women teachers. I used to have a little resistance to this. I'm like, come on, we're trying to dredge up, sift the ashes of Zen Buddhism or Chan or the old way, the old school, original Buddha, to try to dig up some evidence that women had an impact on what sometimes has appeared to me to be a rather, for lack of a better word, patriarchal structure. But somehow that resistance has softened over a few decades of practice, and I hope it continues to soften. So somehow, during our time of trouble, as if there hasn't always been trouble running around our world, I was drawn to this story of Yu Dalpo. So I don't know if you've studied this in your readings together, but I'll read the story and then say a few things. Then maybe we can say a few things together. So this story is called Yu Dalpo. Yu uses her full strength. And here it goes. If you can't hear me, make some gesture. But the laywoman Yu Dalpo made donuts for a living. So kind of like your local cafe. She also studied Chinese Zen, with Master Langye Weijue. And I'm not even sure if this is the Langye who's referred to in the Ehe Koso Hatsu Gonmon, but I believe it might be. Anyway, she's selling donuts, and somehow she had been visiting, or perhaps Langye was visiting her for a donut. And he told her to contemplate the phrase, true human being, true person of no rank, which of course is a famous phrase, if those of you familiar with Rinzai Zen. That was like kind of famous saying of Linji, aka Rinzai. Anyway, she and her husband were delivering donuts. So maybe there was a pandemic going on, so they had curbside delivery of their donuts. And as they walked through the streets, they met a beggar. So street person. And the street person was singing some little song like "Happiness is the Lotus Land." I'm not familiar with that, but that's what this street person was offering at that point. And suddenly Yu Daopo was awakened. And she threw down her tray of donuts to the ground. And her husband, probably seeing the day's wages go into the dirt, scolded her and said, "Have you gone crazy?" And Yu slapped him, believe it or not, saying, "This is not a realm you understand. This is not your territory." And she immediately took off up the mountain to see Lang Ye, who immediately verified her awakening. And she hung out for a while afterwards in his Sangha. And the day after this, Lang Ye asked the assembly, "Which one is a person of no rank?" And Yu shouted this verse. So this is her enlightenment verse. "There is a true person of no rank who has 6 arms and 3 heads. When she uses her full strength to cut, Flower Mountain is split in 2. Her strength is like the ever-flowing water, not caring about the coming of spring." So I think this is kind of a powerful story for a lot of different reasons. I'll start with this. Well, I guess I want to say something about, so we're not having Yu Daopo sitting in a monastery. Yu Daopo actually refers to, Daopo is like virtuous old grandmother. So Yu is kind of a family name. So here's this grandmother, virtuous grandmother, who's a simple person, or what appears to our normal human eyes as a simple person, to some people's human eyes, who has an ordinary job, trying to make a living, selling donuts. She's contemplating this phrase that her teacher gave her, and she's listening to a street person and realizes this mind of great inclusivity. And, does this kind of radical act of throwing down this tray of donuts, right? Like, I don't know, I think about it like, giving up convention and saying, "I've had enough of this," But she's also contemplating this verse, "True person of no rank," and I'll say a little bit about that. So here's a visual aid, little piece of calligraphy with true person. So this is Mu-I Shin-jin. Joan may know, this is person or man, but let's say human being. This is our famous Mu, no. So, originally this true person was a Taoist idea of this like grand adept person, okay? The person who attains like the immortal status, usually some old dude with a beard, basically, hermit. But, Linji, our, let's say 9th century or so famous Zen teacher, kind of turns that to take away this kind of elevated status of this true person and turns it into true person of no rank. And ranking is like without distinction, without being above someone. So true person also later actually referred to in Zen. So, this Taoist idea of kind of the attained wizard turned into this word that was sometimes used to translate Tathagata or Arhat or Buddha nature. You could say this true person of no rank is our true position, which is no position, which is kind of like poured in and out of each human vessel. But because of our human tendency to categorize above and below, up and down, black and white, you and me, Boston and Chicago, we often don't realize that. And that's this kind of radical exclusiveness that might be part of our cognitive structure, let's say, as humans. So this true person of no rank actually, in the original story, a student asks Linji, what about this person of no rank? And Linji gets down from his teaching seat onto the level of the student and kind of grabs the student by the collar, and the student hesitates to speak. And Linji was trying to invite the student to actually inhabit his true, or maybe it was a her, but maybe it was a they, who knows, but the true nature. And the student hesitated. And I felt Linji was somewhat violent, but even in his action of coming down from the seat and meeting the student and begging for intimacy, and the student had just hesitated. I might have not grabbed someone by the collar. What would you do if you wanted to invite someone to engage in intimate connection? But maybe that's what they did in China. So this is where this true person of no rank comes from. And so several hundred years later, a teacher in Rinzai's tradition gave this little phrase to this woman who was a donut maker and seller, and she was contemplating that all the time in her daily activities. And I think, what do we contemplate all the time in our daily activities? Oh my God, COVID's going to get me. Or, now what? How am I going to make some more money, or make myself feel safe and secure, or save the world, But somehow this woman wasn't sitting zazen, as far as I know. Probably had to get up early to make donuts instead of do morning service. But she had her way. And this teacher, Langya, recognized that. And maybe the beggar recognized that. The street person was verifying her awakening. Her husband was maybe a little more confused, it appears. But the story goes that after she ended up going to Langya and having this encounter where she made her own commentary on a true person of no rank, she did go back, by the way, to selling donuts and to her marriage and to whatever situation she was in, and just practiced. And apparently the story was many monks, many male Zen people. I did not hear about female Zen people going to visit her, but my guess is they've just been lost in history, unfortunately. But many famous teachers actually showed up at her donut shop, and she would test their Dharma practice a little bit. And maybe she would invite them to come down from their high seats and live in the world. So there's a couple things about her verse. And, you know, I invite you to write your own verses, your own commentaries on any teaching that speaks to your heart. Don't be afraid to do that. But her verse, there is a true person of no rank who has 6 arms and 3 heads. And this kind of like, I was like, what does this mean, 6 arms and 3 heads? You know, is this like Avalokiteshvara or something? But actually, 6 arms and 3 heads refers to something called an Ashura, or a demon, a jealous god. So this is something in a hell realm. And here's a little description of the way of those in hell realms. It says, always desiring to be superior to others and having no patience for, quote, inferiors, so those of a lower rank, and belittling strangers like a hawk, flying high above and looking down on others, yet outwardly displaying justice, worship, wisdom, and faith. So like a hypocrisy. We may have this in our culture running around a little. This is raising up the lowest order of good and walking the way of the jealous gods, or Ashuras. So these Ashuras are not like typically thought of as positive figures in the pantheon of like the 6 realms, etc. But somehow Yu actually claims, you know, she kind of subverts this idea of like excluding these Ashuras, but uses the energy of that in this person of no rank, this person who doesn't look down on others, this person who sees a kind of radical inclusivity. She cuts through a mountain of obstructions and flows like water. There's something so beautiful about flowing like water and not caring about spring. So even in the middle of winter, and I believe you share some winters similar to Chicago that are frozen. Maybe you felt this in your lives, in your hearts, a frozenness. But don't be distracted. Let your Dharma, your own Buddha nature flow. This is what you, I think, is expressing. So, you know, in some ways, this person of no rank is a nobody. It's maybe what we're striving for in our culture today. You know, in China, it was explicit that people had different ranks in civil service. They had, in ancient China, they had different ranks in terms of value. In our culture, in America, maybe we've pretended for a long time that we didn't pay attention to rank, but that very much that structure of positioning one person above another and valuing one person more than another is something I think we all are realizing, the deep pain of that. So this person of no rank is a person who maybe from their sitting practice of dropping into vastness or inclusivity, maybe just by virtue of somehow having a good grandmother who connected her to a broken heart, but somehow realized that our way is not this way of exclusion, our way in our practice. Maybe, you know, if our practice has anything to offer us, it is this movement towards radical inclusivity that also comes from coming to terms with our own Ashuras, our jealous gods, our looking down on others. I don't know if you may never do this, so I don't want to insult you by ever implying that any of you would look down on another person or think, hey, I've got this all together now and that person doesn't. Like Donald Trump doesn't have it together, right? Maybe he doesn't have it together, but maybe like I think you can extend love towards someone and say, you know, I know that you really want to be president, but that's not okay right now. It's like a toddler, you know, you have to meet each person like Linji would, and sometimes take them by the collar and say, please sit down for a minute. So that's possibilities, right? So this is just my riffing on, you know, Yu Dalpo, who may or may not have existed. But I somehow think this practice of seeing what is this true person of no rank, you know, you could say Buddha nature, but also there's a sense of, is every cell in my body embodying that? That's sort of the radical direction of our practice. So sometimes we have to sit, because actually it's like a lot to ingest and digest to actually meet our moments with this kind of inclusivity. You know, our culture is sort of has an upset stomach maybe over this situation right now, which is healthy, you know, of trying to open ourselves to break through the obstruction of culture, of this mind that likes to distinguish and categorize, the fear we have that's like, you know, if I just like control somebody else or put them down or separate myself, that I'll be safe. I'll never have a problem in life, you know? It's that other thing, that separation, which breaks our hearts, you know? And the knowledge of that we have in Zazen breaks our hearts open. So if our process, I think, has anything to offer us, our Zen process, our Zen practice, it is to offer our world in this moment, right? This kind of auspicious but tormented moment. It may be this way to open our hearts to benefit all beings without exclusion, you know? And I believe that this is what's verifying Buddha nature in each other, is seeing that capacity in everyone and everything, actually. I wouldn't exclude rocks, trees, walls, grasses, pebbles, tiles, rabbits, rats, cockroaches. And this is meeting everyone as true people of no rank, despite appearances. So virtuous grandmother Yu threw down convention and then returned home. You know, she didn't apparently wear an okesa or make herself into some fancy, enlightened person above other people. She just went and hung out. And it's amazing that we even have her story surviving, you know. As far as I know, she didn't found a monastery. So I think that people like this are everywhere. As a matter of fact, they are everywhere, and every person. And in thinking of this story, somehow I thought of another person who was pretty humble and simple in our day and time, who died recently. So you're probably all kind of aware that John Lewis died recently, a great ancestor. And I was really moved a couple days ago, or it was the day of his funeral, was that Thursday maybe, when the New York Times published an article in the opinion section that he asked be published after he died, on the day of his funeral. So how generous is this, right? on the, thinking I'm dying, and I'm thinking, what can I leave for people? This is what our Buddhas and ancestors, you could say, do for us, but this is what many people who don't call themselves Buddhists are doing all the time. And I'll just say a few things, because I think this is sort of maybe a capping verse of John Lewis to Linji and Yu Daopo's phrase, true person of no rank, which I think he's a great example of embodying. And here's a couple words. It says, millions of people, so this is in his writing, I'm just doing some excerpts, but it kind of, millions of people motivated simply by human compassion laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. Ordinary people, people of no rank, that's my addition, with extraordinary vision, can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. This is Yu Daopo throwing down her donuts, a little bit of good trouble on her part. And John Lewis goes on to say, though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer to the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. So this is John Lewis's wish. This is the capping verse of awakening today of a Black man who gave his whole life to his own Buddha nature and to the Buddha nature and everyone else. So walk with the wind, Bodhisattvas. And thank you for listening to me today. Shall we chat? Feel free to share your capping verses.
Okay, so one thing, I can't quite get over the anachronism of donuts in Sung Dynasty China, but be that as it may, I always did like this true person of no rank phrase. It's, kind of like the training is the business casual for your mind that lets you walk into a boardroom or hang out with the janitors without being out of place. So.
Yeah, I think maybe donut could be translated as a rice cake in China. Kate.
It's so wonderful to see you, Laurie. Thank you so much for your Dharma talk. It was just so rich in so many ways. And the part of the story that strikes me is the striking, the fighting back, the saying to the husband, no. And I can imagine with Chinese culture, this would be shocking in a public place. And then the story of I don't know why I'm thinking it's blue, but the demon, the calling of the power of the demon is, that it's so deep that in order to meet a kind of an injustice or a separation, or I don't know, the opposite of radical inclusivity, right? That it's almost like you have to meet it equally, going deep into that injustice that can only be felt, is the force needed. So it's like, but there's like this conundrum in sort of the life that we live in about, and even, you know, you see it on a large scale with these protests, that there is a danger there. You know, it's almost like perhaps because this was like a marriage that I'm sure was wonderful, that's why she went back to it, right? But I mean, I'm guessing, I'm just making it up. I don't know. I just wonder, because I think of, you know, this, that the protests, and that there is a danger there, and maybe the danger is in the separation, that it's like, you know, we're going against this, the public good. Where does it stand? So I don't know. I don't know what to ask for, but I feel like it's sort of a treacherous place. And I don't know, when you go down into the world of the three-headed and the six-armed fight, you know, so to speak. And I don't know if you can speak to that part of the story. Again, I mean, like, is that the moment of enlightenment? Or
I think there's, when you see every moment as a moment of enlightenment, you may be in the direction of our deepest intention, but it is a dangerous place. And, you know, sometimes it's good to sit a long time, to settle enough to meet those moments and flow like water. So one can sense, you know, we can't escape the reality of duality and the reality of non-duality, and not get intoxicated by either one of those things. But to own one's own power and use it is seeing it not as one's own power, you know, but it's the energy of the universe, you might say. And that's kind of like a mind-blowing thing for humans. You know, I came really to Zen practice as a result of political activism and the pain I felt seeing people who were protesting for peace, but sometimes being violent. And it broke my heart, and I didn't really know quite what to do around that. And I met my Zen teacher in that exact moment. And I actually ceased activism for some decades, you might say, in a more active way, because it takes some time to settle. And so your question and your concern about this violence, you know, I felt that you is like turning that power and not even excluding the demon, you know, or the jealous gods, or that part of ourselves, but turning that into something that creates a soft opening. And, you know, we have examples, you know, John Lewis. There are plenty of people that maybe we even meet in our daily lives who come from a place of kindness and confidence and clarity. And that's from our practice. And so there's not an answer that solves this, but it's a willingness, like you're doing, to engage in it, to swim in the water and the turbulence, and find a way to be stable and open and caring. And I sense that in you. So continue that. Thank you.
I don't think really the Asuras or the Titans are exactly demons. They were like kind of rivals to the Hindu gods that were kind of on the losing side, and as such they were kind of angry and kind of jealous, and so those would actually be the people who would be most obsessed with status and rank and whatnot. So it's interesting that she referred to them in her poem.
And using that energy, and in some ways recognizing their Buddha nature, even though they're kind of riled up. They're kind of nervous about losing their status. One thing about practice you may have noticed is that at some point, if you're lucky, you'll feel the pain of losing status, of all the ideas you have about what makes you feel good about yourself, about the ego, about I know this and I don't know that, or I'm better than you, or I'm jealous because you have all that stuff gets sort of flushed out. All those toxins come to the surface. And if you push them away, you realize there's problems. If you hold on tightly to them and are like, no, I can, I'm going to show that I'm like the best Zen student ever. When you're holding on to those things, you feel that pain. And so this middle way of flowing through the mountains is a great instruction. So yeah, those jealous gods were definitely concerned with status. And I'm liking this Zoom situation because I feel like we're kind of all on a level playing field together. And all the rigmarole of around being a Zen priest and doing the Dharma talks, and there's kind of like this formality that sort of gets a little bit denatured, calmed down by this Zoom situation. So like if you were on gallery view and not speaker view, I put everybody on gallery view. It's like there's not this like big head of Laurie, hogging the screen. So you can put me on gallery view. I won't be insulted or jealous. But anyway, so this situation is helping us come to terms with all these things. So thank you, John. Emily, hello.
I'm hello. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I'm really glad you just said that, because I was actually thinking about that as I was hearing that image of the water flowing, not waiting for spring. Just thinking about our travels as a sangha through this Zoom landscape, right? And just having to meet this moment, right? And having to adapt on the fly to different ways of training, different ways of filling temple roles that don't exist right now in Zoom, that have to be, shifted around a little bit. Our physical space, and it's just been so interesting in that way to have to just meet it in that way. And I'm appreciating that. I'm appreciating how we have done that as a sangha together. It's a really important, and it's been filled with a lot of care and a lot of love, and it's been challenging, but I'm just appreciating that image because it's one to hold on to, I think, for all of us as we go forward in that together. Or at least I'll speak for myself. I feel like it's one for me to hold on to as I travel this road right here with Zoom, especially. So training in general, but with Zoom especially, feeling that this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed service, and in this way, because I must say I have a little bit of an attachment to some of the Zen forms. I enjoy them and I love the energy around them, but I also was enjoying, there's a Doan and a Kokyo and a Doshi. Those are all positions, right? But I have no doubt that Joan has imparted that those are positions of no rank, you know. And so there's a way that like we inhabit these forms and positions, but this situation is challenging us to, you know, go beyond, you know, instead of like, oh, I have this special rank, you know, like you walk in the Zendo and you see these people who are Doan and Eno, and at first you're like, oh my God, you know, they're good and I'm bad, or I'm like lower or higher. And, you know, this is sort of helping us soften some of that perhaps. And it's a pretty amazing thing, you know. Emily, by the way, can you share that image? Yeah, there's an image of a true person with no rank that I found on the internet, and I asked Emily to share it. So can everyone see that? Maybe you can expand it a little. I don't know. Can you all see that little frog box? And I really enjoyed this image because I feel like this is sort of like our positions, whether you're the teacher or doshi or person who walked into the Zendo or a street person or a president, that, you know, our nature is just flowing into whatever objects, whatever bodily vessels or physical vessels, you know. So like, but there's this playful nature of being a true person with no rank. So you can unshare that. but I just thought this is the role of like the Doan and the Kokyo. Just kind of like are inhabiting that. So you inhabit the bell. John likes it. Okay. Yeah.
I'm wondering, Hogetsu-sama, if you would be willing to share the case again, all the way through the story and the case, if we could return to that.
Yu Daupos or Linji's?
Yu Daupo.
Yu Daupo.
Yeah.
Okay, so the case is, I'll read it again, just the lay woman, Yu Daupo, made donuts for a living. She also studied Chan, Chinese Zen, with Master Longye Weijue, who told her to contemplate Linji's phrase, true person of no rank. One day, she and her husband were delivering donuts. As they walked through the streets, they met a beggar who was singing, "Happiness is the lotus land." Yu Daupo was suddenly enlightened and threw the tray of donuts to the ground. Her husband scolded her, "Have you gone crazy?" Yu slapped him, saying, "This is not a realm you understand." She immediately went up the mountain to see Longye, who verified her awakening. After this, Longye asked the assembly, "Which one is a person of no rank?" Yu shouted this verse, "There is a true person of no rank who has 6 arms and 3 heads. When she uses her full strength to cut, Flower Mountain splits into 2. Her strength is like the ever-flowing water, not caring about the coming of spring."
Thank you so much for doing that. You know, I just want to share a couple of images from that. This splitting the mountain and the river flowing makes me think of Dr. King's, you know, justice until justice flows like a mighty, I think he says stream or a mighty river. I'm just thinking about that. And then I just want to share that when I was sitting in service and I was thinking about you, Hogetsu, the whole time. And by the way, for people who haven't met Hogetsu before, you may notice there's a tone of intimacy that she has because she's an ongoing part of the Sangha leadership for the Zen Center North Shore. You'll find her on the website. She's our sewing teacher, and she comes every year to help us to sew rakusu. So this is a very intimate, ongoing relationship that we have together that I deeply value, and I know the Sangha deeply values, and I actually know, Laurie, that you deeply value. So this service it's a national, if not a global, conversation among Zen temples. How do we do service? How do we offer chanting and bowing in the age of Zoom? So I was thinking about you the whole time, because it's an ongoing inquiry. How will we bring forth the forms and the ceremonies of this lineage without cease in this extraordinary time? At any rate, while I was sitting, I've been exploring for the last couple weeks as Doshi, just with my back to the camera. I don't know what's going on back there, I can hear. But I'm able to come back to engaging with the altar. And that is what a Doshi does. A Doshi, the priest, the officiating priest, is meeting the altar, connecting with the altar. There is kind of a shamanic quality to it. And this morning, I was focused on Manjushri. This Manjushri statue we have is, oh, I can see now in this light, one hand is doing this. You know, the other hand is holding the sword. But it looked like this hand was doing this. And I'm thinking about you, Daupo, as a woman owning being a fighting titan, you know, which is just down below the heavenly realm. It's still considered a fortunate realm, but a lot of energy, and she's owning that, you know, boom, and at least boom, what I saw. I was thinking about, you know, the goddess of wisdom. I'm just so grateful that you're bringing in gender into this today, because we've been focused a lot on race. And I've been wondering, what is underneath all this? Is it human arrogance? Is it human delusion? Like, what is underneath these categories of all these different isms? And this week, the gender one is up.
Yeah. There's, you know, I think also, I don't know how you feel about this, Joan, but and everyone, but I feel like our biology is behind a lot of this. Our minds work to categorize. You know, survival is often, you know, was based on noticing difference in the environment. On a neurological level, there's a very basic kind of, you know, system that's going, is this familiar? Is it not? You know, we develop habits in our learning. So Zen is like this kind of, I want to say Cuisinart, or sort of like, you know, centrifuge that's kind of breaking up those hardened ideas and kind of reconstituting our consciousness so that we can be more open. But I think it's a natural human thing to fear difference. It's probably an animal thing. And our practice it requires a lot of power to counter that stream, you might say, or to open it up so that it flows. Yeah. And also, Yu Daopo was a person of color, by the way. In our culture, now she'd probably be seen as like the person bringing the Chinese virus or whatever they call it, you know, craziness. And so you know, it's interesting because sometimes I think in our ancestors, we can kind of whitewash them. and so, you know, both in this story, there's so much depth, but yes, gender is also a powerful force. So I really appreciate your Sangha, all of you, for engaging so deeply in practice. Like, I still feel it in Chicago, you know. So it's nice to feel it. Wendy, did you have something to say?
I did, but I'm hesitating because I don't, I'm very grateful for this teaching. I've read some of The Hidden Lamp. I really engage with those stories. And I don't know if but I have a problem, and I don't know if this is the place to, I don't think it's going to be solved here today, but um, I all these, I think Udalpo is the one person in the story who doesn't understand the teaching, at least as I see it. There are way too many stories in this book with women slapping their husbands and priests, and I'm sorry about that. I'm glad to be brought to it again, because I keep going over this. I had read this story before, and there are other similar ones in there, and I've got to understand this better. I've got to understand the person of no rank. I don't get it yet. I don't get it, but thank you for bringing it to me again.
So when
I was going to say something about that too. You know, is it domestic violence that she slapped her husband, or I guess one other thing I'll throw out too. She wouldn't be a person of color in China because, you know, if we were in China, especially back then, we would be the people of color. The Chinese were very racist and you know, very, very arrogant about their.
Yes. So I want to address this violence issue, because I think in our practice and in our lives, we're going beyond these old stories and old people. And I agree. I also felt like, you know, humans can be violent. And you can relativize slapping or like Linji shouting or people hitting people with sticks. But hopefully we don't do that anymore. There might be a different way that, Wendy, you will meet situations, or John, you will meet situations that go beyond you, Dapo. You know, so this is, you know, I mean, I could say, oh, this is just some teaching mechanism or some emphasis, but I don't know, you know, and I'm not, I you know, want to put a warning that I will not support, I do not support these methods that engage in physical or emotional abuse. And, you know, I hope you went back to her husband and apologized for slapping him. And yeah, so.
Yeah, it's tricky. Can I jump in? I just want to say that this is an attribute of Chan, in Chinese Zen. And if you look at during Kinhin, I'm surveying my bookshelf here, and my gaze landed on Andy Ferguson's Zen's Chinese Heritage. You will find in that many stories of men hitting men. And I don't know about men hitting women, but men hitting, this was a flavor. There's all kinds of violence to the body, you know, the self-inflicted wound of Huika cutting his arm off. For me, this is about the body as the place of practice, of feeling pain, of not spiritually bypassing that enlightenment. The body is part of the awakening process. So I would encourage that book, Wendy, so that it could balance out a little bit and you don't have a view of just women hitting men, because this is actually the radical aspect of the story, is that Zen, as Hogetsu's saying, is the great leveler, that it's beyond gender, that it's beyond race, you know, that there is something human there, which I think is the whole point of this with True Person.
Yeah, there's this point of contact, right? Like even in the physicality of this, there's this contact with the body and even with another person, you know, pulling them by the collar or, you know, however, I think that it's good to question these things and to trust and to chew on them without pushing them away. So notice the tendency to be like, oh, I don't like this story, so, or I like this story, so I'm grabbing onto it, but hold them lightly. So thank you for pointing that out. I think it's one that I've struggled with myself.
Well, to be fair, the Chinese didn't treat their women very well, so I'm kind of guessing that, Madame Yu's husband wasn't that nice to her either. So.
So I would have liked it if she would have held his hand and done a dance with him. There are options. And so our creativity might be, we can make our own stories up and embody our practice. In different ways. Kate?
Just to throw in there, because it was great to thank you for reading that again, and Joan for like allowing that to happen, because in the story, actually, the enlightenment came at the song. It was that this is the realm of happiness. The lotus realm is the realm of happiness. So there can be no, scolding. It's like you don't get it. You just miss the story. I don't know. I'm happy that I got that a second time around.
Yeah, it might be easy to a little bit ignore the street person, the beggar, who was speaking and singing. I'm sorry too, and sad that I haven't been able to come to sew together with all of you. We've developed and with everyone's support, this wonderful practice together. And the one thing about Zoom is I've been contemplating how will we do this at this moment when it's probably not such a good thing to be so physically close. But that point of contact you mentioned about the physicality, maybe my version of hitting or slapping is sewing together, of contact together with the fabric and the needle, this dangerous object. But there's something about that there's a weaving instead of a splitting. And that might just be the flavor that tastes better to me of the Dharma. But I'm sorry that I haven't been able to come yet. And I miss sewing with G-Con in particular, and think you are going to be helping greatly, I'm sure. And Kate, I know, has offered her home for a sewing place. Yeah, so I wanted to acknowledge that and thank you all for your great, deep practice that extends even to Chicago and probably beyond.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Yes, G-Con.
I just want to say we've missed practicing with you in person as well, and looking forward to whatever form our virtual sewing retreat may take. Thank you.
Thank you. Me too. And we'll connect, you and I, to figure out, hatch a plan.
Yeah, I wanted to say just that word creativity is so wonderful that you brought that up, because for sure the age of Zoom brings forth all kinds of opportunities for creatively maintaining the triple treasure. So yeah, we're looking forward to hearing what you and G-Con come up with for the sewing retreat to carry on and to not wait until there's a vaccine, maybe. Or maybe we will end up waiting until there's a vaccine, but yeah, we'll look forward to hearing what you both come up with. So, Hogetsu, thank you so much for coming. We know it's earlier in Chicago. Is it 1 or 2 hours?
It's 1 hour earlier only.
Okay. Still, we can thank you for your extra effort in arising so early on a Sunday morning. Thank you very much. And we'll just end with chanting the Pali refuges, if we could. I think if you can, the Kokyo take over. Kate, would you please lead us and guide people to where it is in the book, maybe?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So the book is I actually don't know where it is in the book. Is it,
I think it's turn to page 2 or 3 and see if you can find it there. Yeah, so you guys go ahead and
oh yeah,
click,
it's on 2. It's on page 2.
click on that link.
Free refuge. Yeah, okay. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangam saranam gacchami. Tatyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Tatyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatyampi Sangam saranam gacchami.
Thank you again, Hogetsu, very much, and thank you all for coming. And I just would like to say, please give generously to support the speaker program. It's one way, tangibly, we can express our appreciation for Hogetsu's devotion to practice and to teaching the Dharma, maintaining these forms and ceremonies. You can just go back to the homepage and click donate. All right, have a beautiful Sunday. Thank you so much. Take good care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.